Hello, thank you very much for joining me today for another Daily Thought. I'm JJ, otherwise known as the Practical Alchemist, and today I want to talk about journalism. It's something I know a little bit about, in that I have been a journalist in one sense or another for going on for, yeah, 50 years. There's a long time, isn't it? And journalism has changed hugely in that time. I see a lot of people writing today and talking today about lazy journalism. And that's been creeping in for a long, long time. In fact, there's always been lazy journalists around. But the inability or the lack of initiative in terms of checking facts and finding out what's really going on, that has been going on for some time. Now, when I was training and when I got my qualifications as a journalist way back when, I wrote an essay, a thesis called The Lack of Communication in the Press. And that was all about how the media, newspapers in particular, which were one of the main forms of media in those days, fulfilled a public service. We were there to report on things that people wouldn't otherwise know about, because you don't necessarily know about what's going on in government, what decisions are being made on your behalf by councillors in your area, and also what's happening in terms of pressure groups in the neighbourhood, all that sort of thing. So especially at a local level, journalism fulfilled a very useful public service. And I talked about all of that in this essay and got very good marks for it, as I remember. Now, time goes on, and I noticed that more and more we were relying on press releases from the government, press releases from your local councils. Gone were the days when we used to head off out. And in my day, with a bag full of tuppenny pieces for public phone boxes, because that was pre-mobile phone, so that we could phone into the news desk and hear whether we were needed elsewhere. And we'd go out and find out what was happening in the community, in the area. On a national level, we would be going out and talking to people and finding out what was going on, researching. And then the squeeze came on media, well before social media. And people started cutting back. And then in television, particularly, that I was working in latterly, budgets were cut. You had fewer people to do the same jobs, to get the same news programs out. And that was an issue because there was no longer the money to do investigative journalism. And people like John Pilger, a renowned journalist, would talk about that a lot and talk about how we were really, we really needed to get off our backsides and do some proper investigative journalism. However, that costs money. And the money wasn't around, or if it was, media outlets weren't prepared to spend it when they could just, pick up on what's going around. And the media industry was always an echo chamber. You would listen to what everybody else was doing, and if they were doing something, you would cover it, and hopefully you'd cover a story first, maybe, but then everybody else would follow. And round it went. So that hasn't changed much. We talk about echo chambers today. It's always been like that. So time that you might spend checking facts and researching a story was money. And media companies are all about the bottom line. It's what sells. How many viewers are you getting? How much advertising are you getting in? How many copies, when it used to be newspapers, not so much these days, are you selling? So that has been a gradual change throughout the years as I've seen it, to the point where now, with social media, with the internet, we aren't so reliant on mainstream media, as it's called today. And mainstream media has almost become so discredited that why would you even watch or listen or read it? I certainly, even though I used to work on news programs, have stopped watching or listening to or reading mainstream news. I do pick up things, I pick up headlines, I pick up what's going on, I look into something if I'm interested in it, but I am no longer passively absorbing and consuming mainstream media, and particularly mainstream media news. What I am doing is actively doing my own research. And I think that's what we all have to be. We talk about citizen journalism now, and some great people out there doing that, some fantastic work being done all over the world in that area. But we all need to be more active, I think, in what we consume in terms of information. And we need to do our own research. We need to check the facts ourselves, those that we can get access to, and make up our own minds, and not passively sit and accept everything that's being delivered to us through a mainstream new media channel. That's where I've got to. And I used to work in that arena. Do your own fact checking, do your own research, don't rely on others, and make up your own mind about what might be factual and what might not, bearing in mind that there will always be people out there trying to spin a story. But you do develop little spidey senses, your antenna develop as you go through this process of becoming much more active in your own consumption of media. Today with social media, I mean, look, I'm getting to do this. It's fantastic. I wouldn't be able to say this on a mainstream media channel. Be your own journalist, be your own citizen journalist, if not to come onto YouTube and talk about stuff just for your own good. And also switch off the telly, stop listening to all the dreary news coming through the radio, all about death and disaster. Don't get me wrong. Death and disaster is a fact of life, and we need to know about it. You know, in the old days, we used to pepper hard news with soft news stories. So maybe something good that's happened to the world, or maybe just something fun. Like, you know, our skateboarding ducks. That used to be a bit of a joke in news circles back in the day. But those skateboarding ducks have all flown the coop. They've flown over to TikTok, YouTube, any of those social media channels. And we don't really see much of that anymore on the mainstream. It's all doom and gloom as far as I can gather, because I don't watch it anymore, that mainstream stuff. And I don't have a television anymore. I haven't had a television in my house for many years. Guess what? I'm still alive. You don't die if you give up the TV. You don't die if you stop listening to talk radio. You don't die if you stop watching online TV news channels. Make up your own mind. Dip in and out. Get the gist. Then go and do your own research. So there's a thought. Now, I'm probably going to step back now over Christmas and New Year. So hopefully you've enjoyed this. And if you have, do all the things, like, share, subscribe. I'd be very grateful. And I will see you probably at this point in the new year. Have a fantastic festive season.